Welcome to HIListically Speaking. I'm Hilary Russo, certified holistic health coach and health and wellness journalist. This is an empowering place to explore self-awareness, self-love, and transformation through health, healing, and humor. By sharing life-changing experiences, knowledge, and guests with varied expertise, we'll explore who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. Mind, body, and spirit. I'm glad you're here. I don't know about you, but I'm always amazed by the endurance, performance, and dedication of athletes. And one sport that comes to mind when I think of my neighbors to the north is hockey. I think it's a requirement in Canada to be gifted a hockey stick when you're born. Am I right? Well, I know Justin Roethlingshoefer would agree. Justin devoted much of his life to the game, not only playing, but eventually moving on to work with the NHL to the point where it took a toll on his personal health and well-being. It was then he had to take a step back and reevaluate how he was living his own life. It was a wake-up call and part of his own healing journey that led him down a different path. Now, don't get me wrong, the ice is still a big part of his life. But what he discovered is that inside each and every one of us is an athlete. The arena may be different, but the true potential we all have has always been there. So on this week's HIListically Speaking, Justin shares more on how you can truly own it. All right, Justin, it's great to have you here. We had a little bit of a delay because I just want to start out by saying congratulations. You just got engaged.
I did, yes. So thank you so much.
Of course. I was like, wait a minute, you want to postpone this? Oh, okay, that's a good reason. So congratulations on your recent engagement. Thanks for joining me on HIListically Speaking and sharing with listeners all about you and how you're truly owning it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's been a crazy, wild weekend here, but really excited to chat.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have you here. So it's great to be in the space with a former NHL player. You have a lot of experience in health and wellness and performance, and having you here and having you share your journey is really empowering and inspiring, but I'm going to let you tell it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And for a long time, I mean, being born and raised in Canada, that's kind of what you're bred to do. Is I think I skated before I first stepped foot on the ice and skated before I was able to walk. And my parents had got me my first pair of skates before the age of 1. And it's a cliche, typical Canadian story. And so growing up, that's what I wanted to do, was play hockey, and was blessed enough to be able to come down to the States on a hockey scholarship. And that's what kind of brought me down to the US. But leading up to that point, I had always been obsessed with human performance, human optimization, and what could help get me to that level, because I was never the biggest kid. I was never the strongest kid. I was never the fastest, most talented. But my work ethic and my understanding that there was something bigger that could allow me to be more consistent than everybody else is what allowed me to play at those levels and continue to drive my career. And so once I got to college, I always joke with people that I was never able to have any ladies over, because at night I always had to have these wires attached to my head and the chest straps and pulse oximeters and all these things to try and just really truly track my information so that I knew how I was recovering. And very, very quickly, I started to realize that the focus everybody was putting on the measuring of data and information during workouts or doing games or doing practices was just the tip of the iceberg. And they were really just getting a snippet of time, where in actuality, if we were able to measure 24/7 and really truly understand what was happening from a sleep standpoint, from a recovery standpoint, that was the true optimizer and the true difference maker in being able to show up day in and day out and be better and more consistent than anybody else. And so as my playing career came to an end, I had already really kind of educated myself through massive amounts of active case studies of what worked and what didn't. And so I went and got right into my coaching career. I think it was kind of in this no man's land for about 10 days before I knew where I was going. And I went to the University of Louisville and worked with the men's, women's basketball program, as well as a handful of other sports, doing the same other aspects of sleep, recovery, and performance technology. And that's where I cut my teeth and learned and really started to apply these types of aspects. Well, I got my master's degree in ex-phys, performance science, as well as psychology, and applied all these things together. And the effects were immediate. From there, was blessed enough to be able to do some contracting work with the Columbus Blue Jackets and then the Washington Capitals. From there, took over my own program at Miami University in Ohio with men's hockey, and in 3 years put 15 guys to the National Hockey League. From there, was able to go and really run a program in the National Hockey League with Mark Fitzgerald in Anaheim with the Ducks, and it was incredible, this path and this journey, and seeing the impact that it had. But and then while I was out there, I had the opportunity, a company, again, in the corporate space, kind of called and said, "Hey, I'd really like to have you work with our executive team on really focusing on gaining energy, sleep, recovery, that type of aspect." And I obviously said yes, but I hung up the phone and I called my girlfriend. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with these people. Like, not a clue. I work with athletes. I work with hockey players. Right. And slowly, as I started to really talk to the CEO and really what he was looking for and what he was looking at doing, was he was looking at helping his team and ultimately himself gain energy, increase immunity, increase productivity, increase mood, get better sleep, create a better system for longevity, and do it in a setting that created a team culture around it. And I was like, well, that's what I have been doing for the last 10, 15 years. For athletes, it's just changing the population which you're talking to. So
what made you hesitate when you got that call and you said to your girlfriend, how in the hell am I going to do this? What was the hesitation?
Because I just pigeonholed myself. I just been like that belief of, no, I've only ever worked with hockey players and athletes. How can where's the crossover? But very quickly, I found that crossover in people just looking to optimize themselves, looking to optimize the human experience, looking to optimize and become better versions of themselves. And it's this, it's almost like this unicorn that we're seeking, which is a better, how do we get more energy? How do we get better sleep? How do we fall into sleep quicker? How do we eat better for our body types? How do we exercise better to get the maximum amount of benefit from things that we're doing? How do we recover better so that we ultimately feel better? Because we know when we feel better, we know that we're more productive, we're more efficient, we're happier people to be around. And by doing that, we are able to come off as a better parent, a better son, a better daughter, a better boss, a better employee. And at the end of the day, it sounds so frou-frou, but we all just want to be better versions of ourselves.
That's true. True.
You don't want to be, you really don't want to look like that Instagram model does. You really don't want to look like that bodybuilder does. You really don't want to look like that cover model. You want to be a better version of you. You want to have every aspect that you do. You love certain aspects about yourself, but yet how do I optimize what it is that I'm doing? And that's where when I was in kind of as I finished up that first project with this company, I was like, my goodness, I have learned so much in a month with these people, and the effect that it had, the impact that it had, was 10x what was going on in the National Hockey League. And all of a sudden, there was different benefits from sense of freedom, fulfillment, passions that really were being left untouched when I was there. Not to mention that my values and my moral system were being compromised through the politics and games that you get at the professional level.
Yeah.
And there was a huge opportunity to make a jump and really start to create some change.
So let's go back to that. I want to talk about that a little bit too. Going back to your days working in the professional realm of being a hockey player, and then, just being around that environment, it's very, very tedious, I imagine, very stressful. How were the morals challenged and the ethics challenged that kind of made you start to think about things?
The routine and the travel schedule, was hard. On the outside looking in, always we talk about professional sports. It's like, oh my God, I want to be there. I want that. I want the fame. I want the private jets. I want the beautiful hotels. I want all these things that come with it. But yet, you don't see everything else that goes on behind it. You don't see that you're playing 82 games in a regular season. You don't see that you're on the road for about 100 to 105 days a year. You don't see that you are in a city for 24 to 48 hours and you see the rink and the hotel and the plane, and that you're loading a plane at midnight and you're unloading at 2, 3 in the morning, and you're doing that repetitively over and over and over again. And as that starts to wear on you, you're also then forced to sometimes choose between management and player beneficiary. What I mean by that is, especially when you're in the performance side, the players are doing the best that they can. They have their careers to think about. They have their long-term health to think about. You're playing through bumps, bruises, slight little injuries. There's a difference between an injury and being hurt. You play hurt all the time. You play hurt with lacerations. You play hurt with bumps, cuts, bruises, all these things, just not feeling 100%. But if you're injured, that's another story. And that's like something that would actually hold you out for a certain period of time. Now, management sees it as, hey, we need to have our best players on the ice all the time playing at the peak of their capability, whereas they're willing to do whatever it took. And so I took it upon my responsibility to being in the performance space to look after and look out for these players. And that was my biggest stance. That's where I wanted to go, because again, as a player, opiate addiction was something that, as I retired, something that I suffered from for about a year. And it's not that again, when you hear that, it's like, oh, how does that happen? Well, it was because you were prescribed these things from a injury that you had, or a surgery you had. Yeah. And it's just something that you become dependent on. And it takes you down a dark road very quickly. Versus if there was other ways to do it. You look at a bunch of guys out there right now that are really utilizing CBD or plant-based medicines to assist with the pain and the tolerance of that things are going on with. And so when during my last year in the National Hockey League, it was something that I took upon myself to start. It was probably the last 3 years. It became public the last year, and it cost me my job. But the last 3 years of my career as coaching in the National Hockey League was really helping to educate players on what else was out there. Not giving them anything, not prescribing it, but simply educating to start asking questions.
You mentioned losing your job. Was it because you weren't conforming to the use of the narcotics for wellness rather than the more natural performance techniques that you now are into?
It was because I was challenging the status quo. It's because I was not just buying in. I wasn't pulling the rope, as they were saying, in the same direction.
Because the opioid crisis is a crisis. I mean, what is addiction like?
I mean, it gets dark very fast. You talk about mental health in anybody, and addiction is probably one of the lowest levels of mental health that you can get into,
Mm-hmm.
where the depression comes in, the anxiety comes in, the dark cloud that kind of hangs over you all the time. You obviously start to second guess yourself. You start to second guess your character, your things you're doing, because you know that there's something wrong, but how do I change it? And you start hiding it from people. And so when that happens, you start to have to change the way that you do things. You have to lie. You have to create stories as to where you're going, what you're doing, why you're doing things. And it became, and really you pull away from a lot of your friends, you pull away from a lot of your social network, and it just becomes a very dark place very quickly. And I think that was, having gone through that, thank God it didn't take very long for me to do so. I mean, my final story, which I was just able to go cold turkey on it, was I'd woken up from a nap, and
quote unquote nap.
Yeah. I'd woken up from a nap, and both my dogs had their heads on my shoulder. Basically, when I came to, I looked at them, and their eyes looked at me. I can still just feel it, the penetrating, like, your soul, saying, like, Dad, you can't do this. Like, we need you here. And it was that I just said, I just can't do this anymore. And so went and flushed everything and just went cold turkey on it.
You are so one of the few. That's so it's so uncommon to be able to just wean yourself off of a drug like any kind of opioid, But how was the after effect of that?
You start to feel things that you've never felt in a long time, such as the pains in your hips that you were feeling, and the things you were trying to move away from, the pains in your knees that you were feeling. And you just have to figure out different ways in which to deal with that. But in doing so, you also become much more present. You become much more aware of what's going on around you. And even by doing all these things, and here's the other thing that I think people need to understand with the opioids or anything of that, is I was still operating as a performance director. I was still operating and wearing all my wearables at night. I was still working out daily. I was still performing at a very elite level. It was just that something had a grip on me that, like, my life didn't stop. Until I came out and spoke about it, nobody knew. Nobody had an idea. Nobody had an absolute clue. The biggest thing that effect it had on me was depression and anxiety. And that's just the state it put me in. Because I felt like I was in a box. I felt like I could not get out. And that was the really tough part about it. But outside of that, operating at a job at one of the highest levels you possibly could work at, myself and the way that I was operating, working out 2 to 3 hours a day, still eating incredibly clean, still utilizing all the data and wearable technology that you could on myself to optimize my sleep, optimize my recoveries, to feel good and be able to do things. Was still playing rec league, like, had retired, was playing men's league hockey. In all, it's not like you're just sitting and doing nothing and your life is degrading. Nobody would have had, if I never changed a thing, nobody would have ever had a clue other than saying, man, Justin, like, doesn't come out with us anymore. Or he just seems sad all the time. Like, that's literally the only thing that would have ever been known. And you end up suffering alone a lot of times. And so with understanding that and the effects of it, but still not being able to really know, and knowing that there was something else that can prevent what was actually going on and what was even implementing the risk. One of the companies that I had started prior was called the Hockey Summit, and we brought down about we'd have about 30 or 40 professional hockey players from the East Coast Hockey League, the American Hockey League, the NHL, Europe, train with us, my business partner and I, down in Florida. And the big thing we did was utilize data, utilize DNA, utilize all of these high impact, high effect strategies to create a personalized experience for these players that also then educated, and we brought in specialists from the CBD world, from the plant-based medicine world, that from different supplementation worlds, of how you can do things differently to help manage pain, manage stress, manage anxiety, and the day-to-day challenges that professional athletes face that typically get treated by themselves with alcohol, with other type of hard street drugs, and people find themselves going down dark roads because at that point, as a professional athlete, money is no object. You have access to whatever you want, but you start to get into this cycle where I need to get up for a game, so I'm going to take high caffeine. I'm going to take anything that's going to really get me going. To now I need to come down. And I need to be able to sleep, where I've just played a game. I'm done at 10 p.m. at night. I'm getting on a plane. Now my sleep's interrupted. So you don't get into a good rhythm and routine. And this is where the lack of education, the lack of interest, for lack of a better word, was leaving these guys high and dry without any type of real system to create that. And so the level of understanding of sleep cycles, of circadian rhythm, of nervous system impact, of recovery modalities, of all of these things that you can now do as a professional athlete, and now bring it across to the same type of world, big time hedge funds, venture capitalists, tech companies, all these people that I'm now working with. The avatar is the same type of person.
Well, they're all athletes,
high-performing,
right? We're all athletes
in their own.
Yeah.
Everything we do, every single person is an athlete. I don't care who you're looking at. Yeah. It's just, what is your arena?
Oh, that's a great way of putting it.
Some person's arena is an office space. Somebody else's arena is an app developer. Somebody else's arena is the stock market. Somebody else's arena is the real estate space. But every single one of these people is a high performer who wants the best out of themselves, who expects the best out of themselves, that wants to level up, that wants to be better than the person to their left and right, that is operating at another level in whatever it is that their arena is. And they want to figure out what that next step is. And by doing that, you're continually leveling up, continually getting better, but doing so in a way that you actually understand what you're looking at. You're understanding you're educating based upon the action step that's actually being taken. So it's no longer just hoarding data. It's no longer just having your Apple Watch on, getting, I went 5 circles around my wellness piece today. What does that mean? Nothing. My HRV is 42 today versus 82 yesterday. Well, that's not very good. I had a 5-hour sleep last night. That's not a very good sleep. Well, okay, great. That's just data collection. We come in so many ways. It's been talked about in education space. We have these professional students. You're 45 years old, getting your 7th master's degree. At what point do you start applying what you're reading? We hear it a lot where in self-development conferences, you see the same people year after year after year at the same conferences with the same problems, trying to accomplish the same thing, which is personal growth, but they're not taking action. They're not applying anything they're learning. You see it, same thing. People brag, I read 100 books this year. Congratulations. How much have you actually implemented of what you've read? I've read 5 books, but I've implemented every single thing and it's changed my life. You've read 100. Good for you. You're still in the same place. And so it's taking the data, taking the information, taking the education that is there and figuring out how you apply it to create actionable change in your life. Because otherwise, It's just there. It's being stored. And that is where the health, the wellness, the mental health industry has failed us all. It's failed us all. It has created this massive gap between learning and understanding and application.
How do we make those small changes? Because we don't want to overwhelm people too. I mean, hearing that, for the people that have read the 100 books or done all of the different seminars and the workshops, and it's clearly right now in this pandemic, people are infiltrated and overwhelmed, and also taking the time to take all the online courses and do as much as they can because we're kind of living in this bubble. But it also is information overload. So what would be your advice to people to take those actionable steps in an organic way that isn't too overwhelming? Because maybe they're not the CEO of the hedge fund. Maybe they're just like a mom at home, and their arena is being a mom to 3 kids and having to do everything at once. Or maybe they are in charge of a company and they still have a lot of other things to think about. How do you take small actionable steps so it's not overwhelming?
Yeah, that's a great question because, I mean, our clients, with Elise and I at Own It, go across the gamut. We have stay-at-home moms. We have CEOs of companies. We have teachers. We have doctors. We have athletes. We have newscasters. We have bloggers. We have entrepreneurs, small startup companies. The thing is that where we start with each person is always different. But it starts with one type of action. And so, for example, somebody comes to us and says, Justin, I want to be more energized. I want to feel better every single day I wake up. The first thing I ask them is, what time do you go to bed every single night? They said, I don't know, whenever I get to bed. Okay, great. That's our first step. Our first step is figuring out how do we get the correct amount of sleep cycles. Now, I'll go in depth here a little bit because what starts to happen is people are like, well, I know I need like 8-9 hours of sleep a night and I'm not able to get that. Well, I've functioned really well off 5. How do we know? How do we know if we do not have data, information, or anything to back it up? And that's where, I know I'm not going to answer your question directly here. I don't want to go off on another tangent, but it takes having data and information because every single person is different. Mm-hmm. And that's where every single one of us, the wearable tech industry is a $300 billion industry, mm-hmm. but they failed everybody because there's no actionable steps to anything. It's all generics. Mm-hmm. Well, you slept 3 hours of sleep. You had 4 hours of sleep last night. You're going to get a text that, hey, you need to increase your sleep tonight. Well, great. Thanks. I knew that already. But if you're getting 8 hours of sleep at night, you could be getting a very poor quality 8 hours of sleep. How do we improve that quality of sleep? Goes back to what I was saying. That is the first step. Mm-hmm. Figuring out what time you need to wake up. Count back 4 sleep cycles. Every single person, black, white, male, female, young, old, sleeps in 90-minute sleep cycles. It starts at light sleep, goes into slow wave sleep, which is the physically restorative sleep. Then we go into REM sleep, which is the mentally restorative sleep. And then we go into a little wake period where we're waking up, we're rolling around, and then we go back into that light sleep. And we continue to complete 90-minute cycles. Mm. Now, the only difference between us as individuals is the speed in which we get into those sleep cycles. So we could spend 75% of our time in light sleep. Well, think about that for a second. If we spend if we have an 8-hour sleep and we spend 75% of our entire night in that light sleep space where really nothing happens, we have 6 hours of the 8 that really we're just resting. There's no restorative nature, both mentally or physically. And we're going to wake up tired after an 8-hour sleep. Versus if we are having a 6-hour sleep, but we do it consistently. We go to bed at the same time, we wake up at the same time within 30 minutes of each other. We're going to get into those deeper levels of sleep, the slow wave sleep and the REM sleep, much faster.
Do you find that you're sleeping better since, when did you start really embarking on a good night's sleep yourself?
To be honest with you, I've been doing this for the last 14 years.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I was always made fun of. I was always chirped about, because for me, I always need to be sleeping. And it's over the course of time, as I've gotten older, it's crept down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I've needed, I'm in bed sleeping typically by 10 o'clock every single night.
Do you do the circadian rhythm?
9:40.
Are you a big fan of?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We're hearing more people talk about that.
9:45 to 10:15. That's me going to sleep. And I'm going to give an example of circadian rhythm here in a second to really make people get it, because it's a hard concept to understand. 9:45 to 10:15. That's when I'm sleeping. That's optimal, my window. I just know that. And so even 12, 13 years ago, as I was even through college, I would be going home and wanting to be in bed by 11, 12 o'clock on party nights because I couldn't do it. I couldn't optimize the way my body felt. I've always been that way since I was a kid. And through Own It Again, we do DNA and epigenetic testing. And for me, I'm a morning person. That's just the way that my DNA is made. I am a morning person. I am not a night owl. I do not have any of these night owl genes. You're one of two people. You're a night owl, you're a morning hawk, or you're a combination of the two, somewhere in between. Those are the only three options we have. And so for me, I'm a morning hawk. That's me. That's when I optimize well. So why would I sabotage my ability to optimize myself knowing that? And so these are things that we start to go off. It's data. It's implemented. It's take actionable steps if you know what the data means. And that's where being able to utilize wearables and create this gap separation between what the wearable is saying to you and the actions and actually implementing what it says to create change in your body and in your mind and on your routines that are based off of information and not subjective information that a guru is throwing out towards you.
I love that you're touching on the fact that what you mentioned, you're a morning person. I know I'm a night owl, and not shaming those for, well, you need to be in bed by 10 and up at 6. We're hearing a lot about that. Whereas you touch on a really important point that it's based on your own rhythm and getting that sleep. And, and then there's the in-between, which I'm curious, I'd love for you to talk about the in-between as well. But, I think it's really important that we realize that it is about bioindividuality with everything you've been talking about. Every person is different, how we handle every person's body, mind, and just our genetics, period. So understanding that more and what you mentioned with the wearables can really open up a lot of people's minds to how they work, how their machine, their vehicle works.
It's a big thing that we say. One of our taglines is play your game, not the gurus, because that's where I've said it. The health, wellness, mental health space, they've failed us miserably. They've made us want to be more like them. The Instagram influencer wants us to be more like them. Hey guys, I take this supplement in the morning and I go to bed at this time and I do this workout. This is what's going to get you to make me look like this. No.
Don't get me started on the influencers.
No, yeah. That's incorrect.
Yeah.
But that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
That's what we're being told. That is how poorly we are being influenced by those around us. It's play your game, not the guru's game. Because guess what? The gurus have done one of two things to find out their game. Because the gurus are playing their game. If they're looking a certain way, if they're optimized a certain way, they've obviously found what works for them. They found it through one of two ways. They've either spent a lot of time, 10, 15, 20 years, figuring out what works for them, or they've invested a large amount of money in a coach or technology that has thus allowed them to figure out what their game is and are trying to now figure out a way to scale it, to sell it to everybody else. Those are the only two things that you have. That's it. And so what needs to happen is you need to figure out what your game is. You need to figure out what is right for you. You touched on it. Some people are morning people. Some people are night people. I have 3 clients. They don't go to bed until 2 a.m. They're night owls. They're night hawks. But guess what? We've got their schedule structured so they're not waking up until 9:30, 10 o'clock. And they feel great. They've tried the 5 a.m. club. The 5 a.m. club is the worst club in the history of the world. The worst club in the history of the world. Whoever wants to be up at 5 a.m. if they don't have to? Only to say because you're a part of it. But guess what? There's a way in which we can optimize your routine. There's a way in which we can optimize your health, your wellness, the ability for you to lose weight, the ability for you to gain weight, the ability for you to be more mentally clear, the ability for you to stave off Alzheimer's, the ability for you to be more energetic by focusing on you and your game. And that is what we do. And that is how we've been helping these companies, entrepreneurs, regular everyday people transform their lives in the matter of weeks, because they now have the information they need to take action on the proper aspects.
I imagine that could be a big eye opener once they see a difference.
It's outstanding because what's the best way for us to create buy-in? It's to understand information that we see and have immediate feedback.
Yeah.
And when all of a sudden we have a one-on-one session just like this, you and I talking, we're going through this individual's data, we give them 2 to 3 actionable steps. Okay, tonight, I want you to, I have this 3-2-1 rule. 3 hours before bed, no more food. 2 hours before bed, no more work or any type of sympathetic nervous system stimulating items. Sympathetic nervous system is like that fight or flight, like get going. And then 1 hour before bed, no blue light. And that 1 hour before bed, I have a lot of people say, no blue light, no like iPads, phones, computers, laptops. What am I supposed to do? And that's where I laugh, because it's like, this is where we start doing a lot of parasympathetic stimulating activities, reading for pleasure, meditation, breath work, a hot shower, sitting in a hot tub if you have it, hot tea, going for a quiet walk, listening to soothing music, a nightly stretch routine, something to this effect that prepares you for sleep. Sleep is the number one indicator of longevity, number one indicator of staving off long-term chronic illness, the number one indicator of mental health, the number one indicator of mood, the number one indicator of mental clarity, the number one indicator of weight loss, the number one indicator of pretty much just being a healthier, happier person. But yet, how many people prepare themselves for sleep? Very few. And so the preparation for getting into bed, the preparation for getting to that point of feeling great, we just don't put the time and effort into it. And a lot of it is because we don't know. We take it for granted. We take it for granted. We work right up until 5. Oh, God, I got to go to bed, brush my teeth, throw my clothes off, hop into bed and go to sleep. Well, we wonder why we toss, we turn. We've got things going on in our minds. We don't get into a real deep sleep. We really don't dream. And if we do, we dream, they're vivid, but they're gone. And so we really want to create that hard sleep cycle that optimizes us. And by going back to your question of being able to see the data, giving people 3 actionables. Hey, tonight, I want you to activate the 3-2-1 rule. And within that last hour, I want you to have a hot shower, tea, and meditate. That's what we're going to try tonight. Well, all of a sudden we go in, they're getting personal best HRVs, which is a measure of internal stress on the body. They're getting personal best resting heart rates. So meaning their heart rate is slowing down to the lowest that it really ever has. They're seeing recovery scores higher than they ever have. They're seeing higher quality sleep cycles that they've ever seen. And they're waking up refreshed. Not only are they waking up refreshed, they're usually waking up on their own.
Without the alarm clock. I love that. I know that I'm doing well in my sleep and have done pretty much the actionable steps when I wake up without an alarm clock. And I've noticed that as I've gotten older, with the steps that I've taken to live a much more holistic and healthy life, that I don't need an alarm. Our inner clock tells us when we're ready, you know? Yeah.
And that's the story I want to go back to, because not only does the buy-in come from that, but the way that the body's circadian rhythm works. And think about this for a second. If you go to bed every night at 10 o'clock and you wake up every day at 6, just call it, that's your cycle. That's what you're typically on.
Yeah, the 8 hours.
Your body understands this. Okay, your body knows this. So at about 9:30, it's going to start to release your sleep hormones, your melatonin, things of that nature that are really going to start bringing you down. The adenosine, different types of hormones that are going to really get you into that state of sleep because it's prepping to go to sleep by 10 o'clock. Well, now all of a sudden, if you stay up till 10:30, 11, your hormones have already been released. And now there's this hormone pooling. And your brain goes, oh my God, what's happening? Hilary's not sleeping. Hilary's not sleeping. It only knows one thing. Your brain's number one object is to keep you alive. Hilary's not sleeping. There's danger in the area. We have to keep her awake. We have to make sure that she's ready for whatever's there because there's danger in the area. That's why she's not sleeping. So instead of going through the deep sleep cycles, when you do go to sleep, you're going to toss and turn a little bit. Instead of going through, like I said, all those stages in the sleep cycle, you're going to really spend the majority of your time between waking and light sleep. And you're not going to get that deep restful sleep because your body doesn't want you to go into those slow wave and REM sleeps because that's when you're deep asleep and you're going to be at risk to be injured by whatever danger is there. Even though that's not really danger, your mind thinks that there is. And then so when you start waking up, the waking up hormones, your testosterone, the cortisol levels, everything that typically helps wake us up aren't going to be there. And thus, we need an alarm to wake us up. We're getting drug out of bed. We haven't hit these restorative levels. We have a mental fog. Our body hurts. All of these things start to come about. And it goes, oh my God, that is what your circadian rhythm is. Being able to stay there because your body is this beautifully smart machine. What it does is actually amazingly beautiful in the way that it all operates together. And by understanding that we're throwing off certain aspects as we go through this, and by actually creating this sleep consistency, it allows what our body does naturally to really have an impact and change the way in which we show up on a natural basis. And that is what using data effectively and understanding what it is and applying what we're seeing was really, truly meant to do.
I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. Our own bodies, our machine. We really don't. We're not just flesh and bones and organs and blood pumping through us. It is so much more. All of that is part of the human machine. As soon as we realize that we are meant to run perfectly without messing ourselves up, well, that's when we truly own it.
That is true.
Yeah. So amazing. I love it, Justin. There's so much that you're sharing here that even I'm learning and reminding myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do that. I need to get back into that because I'm that creature of habit. And I don't even have a TV in my bedroom. I won't bring a technology into my bedroom. It goes back down to even not keeping your phone by you. Have you heard that? Just like not even keeping the Wi-Fi on near you because it can mess with your own inner clock and your body.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of things and that's where that, like I said, that blue light aspect, if we can eliminate that 1 hour before bed and then right up until we wake up in the morning, it plays a big role. And again, it all goes into the individuality because some people are like, well, I can't, that's when I do a lot of my stuff. Okay, no problem. Let's figure out how it fits into your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. We need your lifestyle to fit the routines, not the routines to fit your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's not sustainable. We want you to, if I was to say to you, we can create anything that you want that's going to optimize you based upon what you truly desire. Do you think you're going to do it?
No,
of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's when you're placed against the cookie cutter mentality, which there are so many people out there that have this program or have this system. And by calling it that, it's like, I have to fit into this thing to make me work. I am a true believer of how you're working because like with my clients, everyone is unique in their own way. And you have to create something for them based on who they are. You might be implementing techniques, but still those techniques have to be fine-tuned to that machine, So I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So listen, I want to play a little game with you here that I play with my podcast guests, rapid fire. And basically, I've just been listening to our conversation, which has been very engaging and very interesting. And I'm really happy to share the space with you. So thank you for taking the time. But I just pulled some words out from our chatty chat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw them out there because you're such a guy that gets good night's sleep. I'm sure your brain is at optimal level.
Yes.
And ready to play. So just throw back a word at me when I throw it out at you, okay? Show me the inner athlete. Here we go. Hockey.
Fun.
Wellness.
Unicorn.
Action.
Fast.
Opioid.
Danger.
Genetics.
Confusing.
Sleep.
Necessity.
Nice. Oh, wait, one more. Own it.
Solution.
Very well played. Nicely done. Look, I have to admit, you were quick on those. And I was, watching you where your eyes go, you go up to your brain, which I always talk to my students and my clients. We look to our brain a lot for the answers. And it is it's just a technique people do. They think they're going to grab the answer from their brain by looking up at their brain. And you did that on every single answer. Great. You're like, hey, amygdala.
At least I know it. At least I know it's working.
Yeah, it's working. All right. You definitely are owning it. Awesome. So I would love for you to leave a final thought with those listeners of Holistically Speaking. What would you say to them to give them one final bit of advice before we go?
If you're struggling with understanding why you're feeling a certain way, if you feel like there's something more for you, if you feel like there's something that you can be doing but still don't know what it is, don't settle for the status quo. Don't settle for what the gurus say. Don't settle for what you see on social media. Take a moment, ask the right questions, and continue to drive to find the answers because you want to play your game and not the guru's game.
Well said. Love it. Justin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Hilary. It's been awesome being here.
You can learn more about Justin and Own It by visiting the Holistically Speaking podcast page. There, you'll find a link to his website. And if you've got an inspiring story to share of your own, or you want to learn more about how I can support you on your healing journey from trauma to triumph, connect with me on my website, hilaryrusso.com. You can also reach out to me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Hilary Russo. I'd love to hear from you. Holistically Speaking is produced by Alan Seals with music by Lipbone Redding. Connection is everything, my friend, and it's why I'm here, because of you. So thanks for listening. And until next time, remember this: be kind to your mind and don't forget to laugh.